Webinars are hot. As a content marketing professional, I've produced hundreds of videos for social and traditional media platforms and currently work with one of the largest podcast networks in the country. So for me, understanding how webinars work in the B2B space is both essential to my professional development and an exciting form of content creation. According to a study commissioned by digital agency Demandwave, 41% of B2B marketers cite webinars as the best marketing tactic for driving revenue. I've set out to discuss webinars with one of the foremost experts in the field, Matt Lay, president of the Streaming Network in Toronto. Together, we've created this multi-part series of videos and podcasts, the webinar Lessons from the Front Line, or How I Learned to Live with Never Getting a Second Chance with Live Virtual Events. Welcome back to the webinar Lessons from the Front Line. With me, as usual, is Matthew Lay, president of the Streaming Network, Canada's premier webinar service provider, and, safe to say, one of the foremost experts in this field. Matt, following our first series of podcasts, we got a lot of marketers and webinar producers looking for industry-specific data. Many also said, that won't work for my industry, or those must be US stats. So we heard a lot of naysayers too.
Yeah. Funny that that's what you heard, because what I heard was that Pete's basement we were in for the first one, and I'd say no, this was a very interesting new set that the guys built down at the studio for this podcast series. Yeah, and then the other thing that I heard a lot about was when I got convinced to put my sunglasses on in the last episode for the future, and how that might not have been the best idea for my personal brand, but I'm glad that you at least got some real feedback on the content.
I got some real information, and by the way, we are now actually in my basement. We got some great feedback on that, and what we wanted to do is sort of break down the sectors, because what we were talking about last time was very general. So we thought it would be interesting to actually go sector by sector, and we're going to focus this time on
financial services.
Yeah. Some interesting statistics coming out of the financial services sector. There's 780,000 jobs, and it represents 6.8% of the Canadian GDP, which is quite significant. We're playing in a big market here.
And most of those headquarters are right here in Toronto, Ontario.
That's right.
Yeah, That's right. We see a lot of it.
So the financial sector has become the bedrock of the Streaming Network's business. Can we talk a little bit about that? In the last 12 months, we've seen some significant growth.
Yeah, Of all of the the programs that we've launched over the last 12 months, I would say the largest ones have been in financial services, which is interesting because they were early adopters, right? And most of our business is centered around the wealth management space. So you and I, we invest in mutual funds or whatever we might do, and we'll have a financial advisor who speaks to us. That financial advisor is the person who's basically selling us a product that another company manufactures. And so it's interesting is that a lot of financial services are B2C, right? We all have bank accounts, we all buy insurance products, mutual fund products, but in this case, they're applying a B2B model to get to us, going through that advisor who may be part of a large company or an independent. And so years ago, when it became necessary for these advisors to maintain a certain level of education every year, the fund manufacturers at the time had to find a way of reaching these advisors. And so they found that the webinar was an effective way of delivering information on their products and services, but more importantly, accredited content.
Right.
And so from that point, the webinar, if you will, became a staple, or it was a bedrock of their business. And we've always serviced them, from day one, we've always had customers in this space, but it's just over the last few years that we've seen the needs of the space really grow, and hence why they've been such a growth sector for us.
Right. So let's dig into that a little bit. In terms of it is a very different sector from the other businesses that you guys deal with. Let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, it's a big player. Obviously, we talked about that, but what are some of the other differences?
I look at it almost like it's a distribution play. These advisors quite often will work with multiple different manufacturers of products. So they'll work with, a BMO Global Asset Management, as well as a Mackenzie Financial, something like that. And so the marketers are putting this content in front of them, but it's not necessarily, or in the past, has not been a situation where they're looking at these advisors as MQLs or SQLs, where if the person, our last webinar series, we talked about if someone asks 3 questions, downloads 2 resources, if they're taking a lot of action, they're likely interested in your product or service. They weren't looking at it that way and not necessarily having a follow-up process that followed through the webinar. Mm-hmm. They knew why the people were coming, and that was usually to get a credit. And so it's different than other sectors in that it doesn't apply that or was not applying that standard B2B sales process across it. Another reason is that it is a regulated industry, highly. And with CASL legislation and with the way some advisory firms are set up, data is not what it is in the business world. We hear things about, advisory firms where they use one email address for everyone. We hear stories about not being allowed to communicate in certain ways with certain groups because they don't want that to happen. And so the marketers have their hands full. In one hand, they have this great way of getting people to the dance, offering them a CE credit that they need. And on the other hand, they have their hands cuffed because they don't have these big sales teams or this process in place that a company like the Streaming Network might have to really action what they see from a webinar. Right. And as such, I think that what we saw for many years was a stagnant market. People looked at webinars in the financial services space, or at least in the advisory space, as table stakes. We heard this all the time. It just has to work. That's it. As long as we can hear the presenter, the slides go out, they get their credit, nothing else matters. And over the last 12 months, there's been a genesis of wanting more out of the program. We reach these advisors this way, thousands of them every year, or some of them multiple times, or whatever it might be. We need to provide more to them in this medium, and it's been a fun ride the last 12 months.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about how they actually compare to other businesses that you work with. Sure. In terms of, because there's a lot of differences, but then we're also seeing a lot of similarities, aren't we?
Yeah, and that's why when at one point, last time I did the card trick trying to show that some things just always work out. Yep. And there are trends that are happening that were driven by, not by us in B2B, not in the business world. They were driven by what we're doing at home. And those trends are true in, conventional, if you want to call it that, B2B webinar programs like mine, or a technology company as they are in financial services. So across the many customers that we service, and we have a large group of them, as mentioned, we're seeing increased usage within the same customers. So customers who maybe had a standard program that had, 10 bilingual webinars a year or whatever it is, most of them, if not all of them now, we're seeing more of those events happening. And on the flip side, we are seeing a higher viewership across those events, particularly within on-demand. So advisors are real people. They're not, I always say that about everyone's customer, they're normal people at home. They're consuming more video online. They're on the internet more. They're on their phones more. They're using services like Netflix and binge watching content, and those practices carry over into their business lives because they are the same person. And so, higher on-demand viewership was a big theme of last year. We saw the percentage of viewers increase, and most importantly, the amount of time they stay on a webinar increase. In financial services, since you got to stay to the end to get your credit, they have great retention in on-demand, and those numbers are really growing. Another stat that we referenced before, which is held true within financial services, is increased use of video in all aspects, whether it be producing video, short format video for the website that goes into the webinar, doing video webinars for certain segments of their audience who they think that will resonate better with, or basically using the video medium to expand the reach of a physical event or something like that. And then finally, we're starting to see, a modernization in the way they look at their customer, actually looking at the advisor as a prospect, or probably not so much a prospect, but an opportunity for expansion. And so where for maybe the year before or the year before that, I've been at this a long time, I don't remember, and we have a financial services team here that goes out, but sometimes I'm brought into the meetings, is I would talk about all the awesome actionable data that we had. I'd be like, we could do this and we could do that. The stuff that was getting every other marketer really, really excited. How do you get that into my CRM? And a couple of years ago, I was hearing from people, yeah, we can't get that into our CRM. It's proprietary. Or that's going to be a 3-year project. Or, you know what, that doesn't really matter to us as long as it works and they get the credit. And that all changed.
Right.
9 times out of 10 when I'm out there, that's what we are talking about, is how do we get the data, not even into one system, but into multiple systems so that we can have aggregate information, we can action this based around, other data we have on people. And so it's interesting to see that change happen. And it's happened everywhere else as well. But to see that change happen and now it's fun to figure out where are the levers in this industry that drive revenue versus some of the more conventional industries that we've serviced in the past.
Right. So things are changing and yet maintain the sort of same kind of framework as
exactly.
well. The obviously they face challenges within this area. So let's unpack that a little bit. What sorts of challenges are financial services businesses facing right now?
I see 2 big challenges. One of them is flushing it. Maybe it's 3. There used to be a challenge I'm seeing flushed out in most firms that we walk into, which is legacy disjointed systems that tracked purchase revenue side, and systems that tracked advisors, and systems that tracked continuing education, and none of them really spoke to each other. A lot of them were homegrown, and that made them closed to the public and closed to sort of data trading or whatever it might be. And I'm seeing that flush out across companies. As those products become end of life, they look to, like everyone else, look to the cloud, look to new services, which are generally more open. Change management is challenging. They are a highly regulated industry. We deal in a lot of these, and even though everyone at the table thinks everyone knows it makes sense, but going through that change management has to be done very carefully within a financial services firm. So I know there's a lot of people who I've spoken to this year who they want to do more, and they're going to do more, but they've got to take their steps to kind of get there.
Right.
But the real problem that we talk about more than anything, and it was the same problem we were talking about 4 years ago, and it's the same problem we're talking about today, is the management of this CE, or this continuing education. And so the webinar, as I mentioned, grew in this space because it helped deliver that to a broad audience, but that still needs to be tracked. That still needs to be given back to the advisor. There's all kinds of things that go along with it. Plus, the webinar is only one track for the CE, which we found out after we accumulated so many customers in the space, was that they're doing a ton of in-person stuff that has CE. They're doing a ton of one-on-one or small group CE. They might have purchased some content from someone else and that delivers CE. And it's someone's job, and they have to, but the regulators demand this. They have to track all of this for a certain amount of time. I believe it's 2 or 3 years or something like that. And then upon request, these advisors, who are nothing more than sales reps really, always asking marketing for content or whatever, they have to track it for them so they can give them the certificates. Mm-hmm. I've been in rooms this year where people were talking about mailing these things out. I've been in rooms where people are talking about just, it's a full-time job just keeping track of this stuff, and we still are struggling with it, right? And so no matter any of the other problems, this is the biggest problem that I think that they still face, and it's also presented for us the greatest opportunity.
Right, and it's interesting because really these organizations are not set up for. I mean, they're set up to help people make money, to help people. Like, they're not really set up for this kind of administrative stuff, and it must be quite difficult. And obviously, TSN steps into that void to sort of help them with this thing. Yeah. In the last 12 months, as you've seen things expanding, how has the streaming network's approach changed?
Yeah. I think that we looked at this problem, and it was a problem that it's one of those things where you keep hearing the same thing, right? And at first, the CE management, I was like, there's got to be a tool out there. Why have these guys not found the tool? And so unwrap the onion a little bit more, and then you start finding out, there is tools, but they operate for this or like that. And so one thing that we had done is we created a platform that's very simple. And what it does is it basically pulls in data from our webinar tool first. so that advisors can come to this app and basically enter an email address, see all their credit history. What that did, and download their certificates, whatever they need to do. So what that did was it reduced the burden on the financial services firm we were supporting, because they no longer have to email things out, mail, or answer queries. They just say, go here and get your history. Right. So that got off the ground, and our flagship customer was BMO Global Asset Management. Things went really well with them, and then they said, hey, we got this other problem over here, which is in person. And I'm like, we live in a virtual world, man. We got nothing to do with in person. And when we started having those meetings, we realized that that problem was even larger. Guys walking into meeting rooms to get their accredited content and dropping off business cards, and that was the record that they had been there. People having paper sign-in sheets across the country, events occurring that maybe the CE person had created a program that could be delivered out there, but didn't know every day that it was being delivered, and then people were looking for credits afterwards. And so this became a larger and larger annoyance for them, but also made our product a lot less valuable to them because we were only servicing this virtual audience. And so this year we invested money, time, and resources into finding an easy way of ensuring that this product is where all of the data lies. Whether you're on site, you get data in through API or upload. If you're online on our platform, it's automatic. And if you're online on another platform, again, API automatic or upload from that system. But at least now, an advisor or anyone coming in who's taking your courses gets access to everything in one spot, and you have detailed tracking on what everyone is doing. Right. So when that got built, we got that in place, and we had the webinars going, and that became a big catalyst for change within companies. This fixed such a big problem, even though if you ever look at it or stuff, it seems like such a simple thing, and it really is, but it fixed such a big problem for them that we started moving on to the next problem. And the next problem was data integrity, was people using personal email addresses versus work email addresses, because a lot of these guys are independents, and being able to effectively create a profile for someone and pull them through this process of webinars or online training or whatever it is, and CE. And so we started utilizing one of our products that I might have talked about last time, the virtual environment product. Mm-hmm. Initially set up for virtual conferences, later adopted by a lot of internal learning and development departments as a virtual learning environment, which was a more exciting way of delivering content to your employees than an LMS system. And we skinned that for the basically an advisor experience. Come in through some level of single sign-on, access all of this great CE content, as well as get all of your CE content. But because you come in with one profile, it helps fix the data problem. Right. And so we went from being this outlier that was delivering some CE in these webinars, some thought leadership too, down to this integrated aspect of these financial services companies, getting data from them, passing data back to them, and in the end, fixing a bunch of problems along the way. And so it was, you keep getting asked to do something for someone. Eventually, you figure there's some money there, but it's been a fun way. It's been fun for me learning about, these challenges, and we've been able to find some pretty simple solutions for them.
Right, and it must be great because the advisors, obviously, for them, it's a wonderful experience. It's something that they can really, it cuts down on their travel time. They can focus more on their clients, right?
Yeah.
So and the ability for these companies to gather have all this information in one sort of spot.
Yeah.
must be a huge win for them. So like they can just do away and have people doing all kinds of other important tasks.
Exactly.
Vacuum up business cards.
Yeah, and those people, in those firms are professionals. So it's not like they have, and they're getting temp labor to do this work, right? So it's an expensive hours, But think about this too. You mentioned the advisor experience, the advisor making it easier, and this has been something that we've been hearing a lot. And this is coming up a lot in many, call it mature industries, legal, in the pharmaceutical industry dealing with healthcare professionals, and in financial services, we hear it in almost every meeting. So we have to improve that advisor experience,
right?
And that's because, for I don't know if it's a changing demographic that everyone is facing. The younger advisors are now starting to come through, or it's a more competitive landscape. I'm not sure, but you're sitting here and you're looking at these process flows that made sense 5, 6, 7 years ago were done because they had to be done. Websites that are set up with high levels of compliance so that there's a lot of checks and balances going in there, which means that every other marketer out there is making all of their stuff as easy as possible to access. And financial services, unfortunately, was adding all of these layers and these steps. So you've got an advisor who's even 30 years old, coming into the market. These are the ones that they want, right? This is the future of their client base. And they're looking at this going, are you kidding me?
There's a ton of friction.
Are you kidding me? This is what I got to do to get my content?
Yeah.
And so improving that advisor experience is always, if we get an RFP or if we walk into the room with the SVP, that's one of the top 3 things that they're trying to do with the project that they're opening with us. So.
And the reaction generally has been very positive, obviously, with these new products, and you're getting a lot of people coming to you saying what they're saying.
Well, yeah, I mean it's funny. We always say this. We don't get a lot of the downstream response from like the advisor or whatever it is, but I think now it's at a point where we're simply giving them what they expect to have. Right. You know what I mean? Access to what they want when they want it,
right,
like the rest of the world, in their personal life. But in general, we're hearing from our customers just in that reduction in time. We've got some case studies about it. The cool thing is that I felt it was a bit of a stagnant market for us. We were delivering the same thing over and over again, and now we go into meetings like, can we do this? Can we do that? Because now that we have this basis of success, like, what else can we do? Right. And they're starting to really start to think, which is a lot of fun.
That's amazing. Well, that's all the time we have.
Oh.
Mom's calling me up for dinner. It's lasagna night.
Oh, well, that sounds good. I think I said webinar last time, and that, whatever that was, 20, 30 minutes than I have any time I've been on camera.
Well, we're going to rectify that in the next webinar. So
fair enough.
Until then, thank you very much, Matt, for coming down to the basement and enjoying this time with me, and we'll see you again.
Sounds good.
Good.